There's a photograph taken in 1943, black and white, slightly overexposed, of a garden plot in war-rationed England. The woman tending it has no access to commercial fertilizer, no nitrogen pellets, no synthetic phosphate blends, no garden center down the road. What she has is kitchen scraps, a spade, and knowledge passed down from her grandmother. And in that photograph, the plants behind her are enormous, lush, dark-leafed, heavy with fruit. A neighbor's plot next to hers, the one receiving government-issued synthetic amendments, looks thin by comparison, sparse, almost defeated. I've been staring at that photograph for 3 years, and I finally understand what she was doing. She was burying banana peels, not tossing them on top of a compost pile, not blending them into a slurry, burying them in a very specific way, in a very specific location relative to her plants. And what I'm about to show you isn't a gardening hack. It's a complete rethinking of how nutrients move through soil, why placement matters more than quantity, and why most people who try this technique get it subtly wrong in ways that cost them months of results. Stay with me, because I'm going to show you the exact method, and I'll get to the precise placement, depths, and timing about 14 minutes in. But first, I need to show you why everything you've been told about soil amendment is built on a foundation that was never designed with your garden in mind. Walk into any garden center today, the fluorescent-lit kind with the squeaky trolleys, and the bags stacked ceiling high, and you'll find the same product categories they've been selling for 40 years. A bag of slow-release granules for $22. A bottle of liquid concentrate for $17. Bone meal, blood meal, kelp extract, worm castings in plastic tubs. And somewhere near the back, a sad little rack of organic options that cost twice as much and come with a paragraph of fine print about application rates. The average home gardener in North America spends between $300 and $800 per year on soil amendments. That's the number from a 2021 consumer survey conducted across 6 U.S. states. $800 for a hobby garden. And here's what nobody behind that counter is going to tell you. The majority of synthetic fertilizer that gets applied to home gardens never reaches the plant. Never. Studies from Cornell University's Soil Science Department put the nutrient uptake efficiency of granular NPK fertilizers in garden soil at somewhere between 30 and 50% under ideal conditions. Under average home conditions, inconsistent watering, compacted soil, the wrong pH, that drops below 20. You are buying $100 of nutrition and delivering, at best, $20 of it to your plants. The rest leaches into groundwater, binds to soil particles in unavailable forms, or volatilizes off as gas. They know this. The companies that formulate these products run extensive soil science research. They understand cation exchange capacity. They understand rhizosphere dynamics. They understand exactly how soil biology mediates nutrient availability. And what they sell you anyway is a product calibrated for agricultural scale application, repackaged into a format that looks like it was designed for your raised bed. It wasn't. Now I want to be careful here because I'm not saying there's a boardroom somewhere with executives cackling about duping gardeners. The reality is more mundane and, in some ways, more frustrating than that. The home gardening market is a downstream afterthought of industrial agriculture. The products were formulated for 1,000-acre cornfields. The application logic was developed for monocultures with irrigation systems and soil testing infrastructure. What gets sold at the garden center is just a smaller bag of the same stuff, with the same underlying assumptions baked in. And one of those assumptions, a foundational one, is that you add nutrients to the soil broadly, and the plant finds them. That assumption is wrong, or at least it's catastrophically incomplete, because the way nutrients actually move through living soil is not a diffusion cloud waiting for hungry roots to wander into. It's a targeted, biologically mediated exchange that happens within millimeters of specific root zones. And when you understand that, really understand the geometry of how a plant feeds, it changes everything about where you place your amendments. That's what the woman in that photograph knew. That's what I want to show you today. To find the origin of what I'm now calling precision subsurface amendment, though it has older names, and I'll get to them, you have to go back to pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, specifically to the agricultural practices of the Maya lowlands, where farmers were working some of the most nutrient-poor tropical soils on Earth. Thin topsoils over limestone karst, high rainfall that leached nutrients rapidly, no draft animals to haul bulk compost. What the Maya developed, and what archaeologists have spent the last 3 decades slowly piecing together from soil core samples and field excavations at sites like Seren in El Salvador, was a system of microburial. Not composting in heaps, but embedding organic material directly into the root zone of individual plants in precise, targeted deposits. The deposits weren't random. They followed a logic that aligned with where secondary roots, the fine feeder roots that actually do most of a plant's nutrient absorption, tend to form and extend. A 2018 paper published in the journal Latin American Antiquity analyzed soil profiles from Maya agricultural terraces and found elevated phosphorus concentrations at consistent depths of 12 to 22 centimeters in patterns that don't occur naturally in the surrounding geology. The researchers concluded the phosphorus was almost certainly organic in origin, decomposed plant material specifically, and had been placed deliberately over generations. They called it one of the most sophisticated examples of pre-industrial soil management in the Western Hemisphere. What does this have to do with banana peels? Everything. Bananas, the fruit, the plant, the whole genus Musa, originated in Southeast Asia and spread through trade routes and colonial movement into tropical regions worldwide, including, eventually, the Americas. But the understanding that banana plant material is extraordinarily rich in specific minerals, particularly potassium, phosphorus, and calcium, predates any formal chemistry. The women farmers of West Africa, who developed sophisticated compound gardening systems over centuries, knew that burying banana stem fragments near their crops produced dramatically improved growth. This knowledge traveled with the diaspora. It survives in fragments of agricultural tradition that were never written down because they didn't need to be. They were practiced. Potassium. That's the element that defines banana peels as a soil amendment. A single, dried banana peel contains roughly 42% of its dry weight as potassium carbonate. To put that in context, wood ash, one of the oldest known soil amendments, averages around 6% potassium by dry weight. Green sand, a popular organic fertilizer, is typically 3 to 5%. A banana peel, properly decomposed in place, delivers more plant-available potassium per gram than almost any common organic material you can bury in soil. And it doesn't stop at potassium. Banana peels contain manganese, which activates a suite of enzymes involved in photosynthesis. They contain sulfur in organic-bound forms that become available slowly as the material breaks down. They contain small but meaningful quantities of iron, zinc, and copper. It's a nutritional profile that would cost you $40 in a bag at the garden center. And it comes from the thing you were about to throw in the trash. But here's where most people get this completely wrong. And it's a mistake I made for 3 years before I figured it out. They throw the peel on the compost pile, or they lay it on the soil surface, or, and this one is becoming popular on social media, they blend it with water and pour the liquid around the base of the plant. And all of those methods work. Some of them, partially inefficiently, because none of them account for the geometry of root feeding. Stay with me for a moment, because what I'm about to explain is the single most important concept in this entire video. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It will change the way you look at every plant you grow for the rest of your life. A plant's root system is not a uniform globe, radiating outward from the stem. It's more like a layered architecture. The thick, structural roots closest to the stem are primarily water-conducting highways. They move moisture and some dissolved nutrients, but they are not the primary site of nutrient absorption. The real work happens at the feeder roots. These are fine, hair-thin structures, usually white when healthy, that emerge from the lateral secondary roots. Feeder roots are densely concentrated in a zone that typically extends from about 8 centimeters below the surface to about 30 centimeters below, and laterally outward from anywhere between 15 centimeters and 1 meter, depending on the plant. The very tip of each feeder root is surrounded by a microscopic community, bacteria, fungi, especially mycorrhizal fungi, that act as brokers between the plant and the mineral world of the soil. The plant actually exudes sugars from these root tips to feed the fungi. In exchange, the fungi extend their thread-like hyphae into soil particles the root itself cannot reach, extracting minerals and trading them back to the plant. This is the rhizosphere. Think of it as a city. The root tip is the marketplace. The fungi are the supply chain. And the soil around it, the exact few centimeters of soil in that zone, is where every transaction happens. When you bury a banana peel on the surface or add it to a compost pile, the nutrients it releases have to travel. They have to dissolve into water, be carried downward by gravity, or taken up slowly by soil microbes, and eventually find their way, maybe, to the rhizosphere. In sandy or loamy soils, water-soluble potassium can leach past the root zone entirely before the plant can capture it. In clay soils, the potassium may bind to clay particles in forms the plant can't access without the right pH and microbial activity. Surface application is an upstream gamble. You're hoping the nutrient finds its way home. Subsurface placement, specifically, placing organic material within or adjacent to the active feeder root zone, bypasses all of that. You're delivering the nutrient package directly to the marketplace. And when that package begins to decompose in place, surrounded by the exact microbial community that has evolved to process organic material and interface with plant roots, the uptake efficiency jumps dramatically. A study from Wageningen University in the Netherlands, one of the world's foremost agricultural research institutions, examined the difference between surface-applied and subsurface-incorporated organic amendments in vegetable trials. Their finding, subsurface placement improved phosphorus availability by 63% compared to surface application, and improved potassium recovery by 41%. The plants didn't receive more fertilizer. The fertilizer was just positioned where the plants could actually use it. 63%. That's not a marginal improvement. That's the difference between a garden that limps along and one that surprises you every week. Now, here's the part that really stopped me cold when I first came across it. And this is one of those moments where you might want to pause and sit with what I'm about to say. As a banana peel decomposes in the soil, it doesn't just release minerals passively. It feeds the soil biology. And the soil biology, in response, begins restructuring the soil itself. The specific microbes that colonize decomposing banana material, including species of Bacillus, Pseudomonas, and several families of Actinomycetes, are known nitrogen fixers and phosphate solubilizers. Nitrogen fixers take atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into ammonium, a form plants can absorb. Phosphate solubilizers produce organic acids that dissolve insoluble mineral phosphate into plant-available forms. In other words, when you bury a banana peel near your plant's root zone, you are not just adding potassium. You are seeding the soil with a microbial community that actively improves the availability of nutrients that were already present but locked up. Nutrients your synthetic fertilizer applications have been walking right past. Your soil probably already contains more phosphorus than your plants will ever need. Phosphorus is abundant in most soils. The problem is that a large fraction of it is bound to calcium, iron, or aluminum in forms the plant cannot dissolve. It's like having a warehouse full of food with a lock on the door. The phosphate-solubilizing bacteria that colonize decomposing banana material, they have the key. I want to address something directly, because I know some of you watching are going to be skeptical. Maybe you've tried burying banana peels before. Maybe you dug them up 2 months later and found them sitting there, barely decomposed, looking approximately as sad as when you put them in. Maybe you concluded the whole thing was nonsense. If that happened to you, I can almost guarantee I know what went wrong. And it comes down to depth. Most people, when they bury a banana peel, dig down maybe 5 centimeters, 6. They scratch a shallow hole, drop the peel in, cover it up. Bone dry. And decomposition requires moisture. Without moisture, microbial activity halts almost completely. The peel sits there, desiccating, contributing nothing. The second most common mistake, and this one is counterintuitive, is burying it too close to the stem, right up against the trunk or the base of the plant. There's a logic to that instinct. But the structural root zone immediately adjacent to the stem is the nutrient highway, not the nutrient market. The feeder roots, the fine roots doing the actual absorbing work, extend outward and down. Placing the amendment right at the base is like delivering groceries to someone's backyard when their kitchen is around the front. I'll give you exact placement specs in a few minutes, but hold that thought. Because first, I need to explain one more mechanism. One that took me completely by surprise and that I've never seen discussed in any gardening channel or article. Banana peels, as they decompose in moist soil, produce a slow release of ethylene. If that word rings a bell, it should. Ethylene is a plant hormone, one of the most important ones. At controlled concentrations in the soil environment, ethylene produced by decomposing organic matter has been shown to stimulate root branching, to cause the plant to produce more feeder roots, more lateral root extensions, more mycorrhizal connection points. A 2020 paper in the journal Plant and Soil examined the root architecture responses of tomato plants to subsurface ethylene exposure, mimicking that produced by decomposing organic material. The results were striking. Plants with subsurface organic amendment nearby showed 31% more lateral root density in the amendment zone compared to control plants. More roots in the zone where the nutrients are. The plant isn't just passively absorbing, it's reaching toward the food. Think about what that means architecturally. You place a banana peel in the right zone. It begins decomposing. It releases potassium and trace minerals. It feeds phosphate, solubilizing bacteria. And it produces ethylene that signals the plant to grow more roots into that exact zone, increasing surface area for absorption precisely where the food is. It's a self-reinforcing system, and it costs you nothing but the banana you are about to eat. Have you ever tried burying peels near your garden? I want to know what you noticed. Drop it in the comments, because the variation people report based on soil type is genuinely fascinating, and I'm compiling it for a follow-up. All right, here is exactly how to do this. And I mean exactly, because the details matter more than most people realize. What you need: banana peels, obviously, fresh or dried. Dried peels work better in very wet climates because they decompose slightly more slowly, giving you a longer duration release. You need a narrow trowel or a dibber. That's a pointed tool designed for making planting holes. You can get one for $3 to $5 or make one from a sharpened stick. You need water if your soil is dry. That's it. Total cost, $0, or the price of a dibber if you don't already have one. Step 1. Choose your target plant. This method works on virtually any fruiting or flowering plant: tomatoes, peppers, squash, roses, fruit trees, berry bushes. It's less relevant for leafy greens like lettuce or spinach, which are primarily nitrogen-hungry and don't benefit as dramatically from a potassium-focused amendment. For those crops, a different subsurface approach works better, but that's for another video. Step 2. Identify the drip line. This is a term for the circle on the ground directly beneath the outermost edge of the plant's canopy or foliage. This is roughly where the lateral feeder roots tend to extend. Not exact, roots are messy and irregular, but it's a reliable approximation. For a tomato plant with a canopy spread of 60 centimeters, your target zone is a ring roughly 30 centimeters out from the stem. Step 3. Using your trowel or dibber, create a vertical hole at the drip line. You want a depth of 18 to 25 centimeters, not 5, not 10, 18 to 25. This puts your amendment below the dry surface layer, into the consistently moist zone, where feeder roots are active. If the soil is hard or clay-heavy, pour a cup of water into the hole and wait 5 minutes for it to absorb before continuing. Step 4. Cut your banana peel into rough sections, pieces about 5 centimeters long. Do not leave the peel whole. Surface area matters for decomposition rate. Cutting it speeds up the process significantly. Place 2 to 3 peel sections into the hole. Step 5. Optional but recommended. Add a small pinch of soil from a healthy part of your garden on top of the peel pieces before you backfill. You're inoculating the amendment with local soil microbes, giving the decomposition process a head start with organisms already adapted to your specific soil conditions. Think of it as adding a starter culture. Step 6. Backfill the hole with the soil you removed. Tamp gently. You don't want compaction, just enough to eliminate air pockets. Water the area if the soil is dry. For a single medium-sized tomato plant in a raised bed, I use 2 to 3 holes placed at different points around the drip line, spaced roughly 30 centimeters apart from each other. For a large fruit tree, apple, pear, plum, I use 6 to 8 holes distributed evenly around the drip line, because the root zone is proportionally much larger. Timing matters too, though perhaps not in the way you'd expect. The most effective window for this technique is when the plant is entering a period of high potassium demand, which for most fruiting crops is just as they begin setting fruit, or just before flowering. For roses, this aligns with the start of the bloom cycle. For trees, late spring when the canopy is expanding rapidly. Applying it at the right growth stage means the nutrient release from the decomposing peel coincides almost perfectly with the plant's peak need. That synchrony is part of why the technique works so well when timed correctly. Most people get 2 things wrong. First, they don't go deep enough. I've already covered that. Second, and this is the one that surprises people, they use too many peels at once. There's an instinct, once you understand how nutrient-rich peels are, to stuff as many as you can into the hole. But decomposing organic material produces acids as it breaks down, and in concentrated quantities, that acid load can actually lower the soil pH around the root zone faster than the soil's buffering capacity can compensate. You end up temporarily creating conditions that reduce nutrient availability rather than improving it. 2 to 3 peel sections per hole, not the whole peel, not 6 peels in one spot. Moderation here is a feature, not a limitation. For gardeners who have been doing this for a season or 2 and want to take it further, there's an advanced variation I've been experimenting with that adds a second layer of biological activation. Before you place the banana peel sections in the hole, dust them lightly with powdered biochar. Agricultural grade, not the charcoal briquette kind. Biochar is a form of carbon with an extraordinarily porous structure, like a microscopic sponge. It colonizes rapidly with soil bacteria and fungi, and when paired with the banana peel amendment, it extends the activity of the microbial community well beyond the lifespan of the peel itself. The biochar stays in the soil essentially permanently. You're making a one-time investment that keeps improving over years. The combination, biochar plus subsurface banana peel, was tested in a small-scale trial by researchers at the International Biochar Initiative in 2019, using tomato plants in a greenhouse setting. The combined amendment produced 28% higher fruit yield compared to banana peel alone, and the improvement was still measurable in the second growing season without any additional amendment. The biochar essentially creates a microbial hotel that persists long after the peel has fully decomposed. For climate adaptation, if you're gardening in an arid or semi-arid region, the depth recommendation increases. Go to 25 to 30 centimeters to place your amendment in the soil's permanent moisture zone, below the surface layer that dries out in summer heat. In cool, wet climates, Pacific Northwest, coastal regions with high rainfall, you can work at the shallower end of the range, 15 to 18 centimeters, because moisture is abundant and decomposition will proceed quickly, even at moderate depth. In very cold climates, where the soil freezes solid for months, this technique is best applied in spring, just as the soil thaws and before active growth begins. The peel will begin decomposing slowly as the soil temperature rises, reaching peak nutrient release in late spring when the plant is entering its most vigorous growth phase. It's almost alchemical in its timing when you get it right. Nature doing the scheduling for you. One more thing most guides skip entirely: what to expect from your soil texture over time. This isn't a one application fix that you do once and forget. This is a practice, a rhythm. As you continue placing organic material into your soil's root zone across multiple seasons, you'll notice the soil in those areas becoming darker, looser, more friable, which just means it crumbles pleasantly between your fingers rather than clumping or compacting. That's humus forming. That's the long-term structural transformation that synthetic fertilizers simply cannot produce, no matter how faithfully you apply them. You are not just feeding the plant. You are rebuilding the living infrastructure of the soil itself. Now, let me walk you through what actually happens in your garden after you start doing this, because the timeline is important to understand, especially when something looks like it's not working. In the first week, nothing visible changes. The peel is underground. The soil looks exactly as it did before. But microscopically, the decomposition process has already begun. If you could shrink yourself down and look at what's happening around that buried peel, you'd see a bloom of microbial activity, populations of bacteria and fungi multiplying as they encounter the novel food source. The first nutrients beginning to release are the most soluble ones, the potassium primarily. It doesn't stay as potassium carbonate. It dissolves into the soil water and begins moving into the rhizosphere. By the second week, if your plant was showing any subtle signs of potassium deficiency, and many do, manifesting as slight yellowing at leaf margins, or a dull rather than glossy leaf surface, you may start to see those symptoms beginning to reverse. Not dramatically, not like a before and after advertisement, subtly. A deepening of green, a slight increase in leaf turgidity, which is just how we describe that healthy, firm, almost waxy fullness that a well-fed leaf has. By the end of the first month, if you were to carefully unearth your buried peel, and try this once just to see, it's genuinely illuminating, you'd find it dramatically reduced in size, partially colonized by white fungal threads. Fragrant in a way that is distinctly different from rot. Earthy, almost sweet, the smell of active decomposition rather than decay. The soil immediately surrounding it would be noticeably darker than the soil an inch away, richer, more alive. By month 2, that peel is essentially gone, but what it has left behind is not nothing. It has left behind a microbially enriched zone, a pocket of enhanced soil biology that continues to mediate nutrient availability long after the physical material has vanished. The fungi that colonized it have extended their hyphae outward, connecting with plant roots and with the broader fungal network in your soil. The bacteria are still cycling nitrogen and solubilizing phosphate, operating in a zone of elevated organic carbon that sustains them. This is why, over multiple seasons of this practice, you begin approaching something genuinely extraordinary. A soil that becomes largely self-sustaining in its fertility. Not a soil that needs nothing. No system is truly closed, but a soil where the biological machinery is functioning so actively that the nutrients cycling through decomposing plant material, the nitrogen fixing from the atmosphere, the phosphorus unlocking from mineral reserves, are sufficient to support healthy plant growth with dramatically reduced or zero external input. That's what the woman in that wartime photograph had built, not by accident, by practice, accumulated across generations of her family, by placing things in the ground in the right way, in the right place, at the right time. The synthetic fertilizer narrative, the one that says soil is essentially inert and must be dosed with external nutrients, only became dominant in the 20th century, and specifically after World War II, when surplus ammonium nitrate production capacity from munitions manufacturing needed a new market. Before that, gardeners and farmers across the world maintained soil fertility through biological systems: rotation, burial, incorporation of organic material, systems that built soil rather than consuming it. That knowledge didn't disappear. It was economically displaced, and it's available to you right now. There's something I want you to sit with as you finish watching this. Something beyond the technique, beyond the potassium percentages, and the microbial mechanisms, and the exact depth measurements. The act of burying something in your soil, not composting it, not processing it, not purchasing a product derived from it, and trusting that the biology underground will transform it into something your plant can use. That act is a form of partnership, a relationship with a living system, rather than an engineered transaction with a synthetic one. Your garden is not a container to be filled with inputs. It is a community, a functioning ecosystem with its own intelligence, distributed, decentralized, responsive. And what I've been describing today is not a trick or a hack. It's a vocabulary, the beginning of a language you can learn to speak with your soil. Every peel you bury is a sentence in that language. The returns compound, not just nutritionally but structurally. The soil beneath a garden that has been managed this way for 5, 10, 15 years does not look or function like the soil beneath a conventionally fertilized garden. It is darker, deeper, teeming. It holds water in ways that save your plants through droughts. It drains in ways that protect them from rot. It breathes. And yes, healthy soil literally breathes, exhaling carbon dioxide as organisms metabolize within it, in ways that signal an entire ecosystem functioning as it was designed to function. You don't need to buy that back. You need to build it. And the instruction manual is 300 million years old and available anywhere a plant has ever grown. Share this with someone who's been spending money on fertilizers they don't need and getting results they don't deserve, because the alternative has always been right there, peeled and ready, at the kitchen counter. Subscribe if you want to keep going down this path. We are unearthing what they tried to bury. And next week, I'm going to show you something even older than the Maya technique. A soil amendment method used across 3 continents, independently, that modern soil science has only recently been able to explain, and the implications for how you structure your entire garden layout are honestly a little staggering. I'll see you there.